Inside the Ralph Mark Gilbert Civil Rights Museum in Savannah is a room honoring the city's Black leaders. There's local civil rights icons, politicians, but there's one leader you won't find: District Court Judge. That's because the Federal Trial Court District where the museum sits, Georgia's Southern District, has never had a non-white judge. In the federal court system, the 94 district courts are the first to hear criminal and civil cases. The more than 670 judges who sit on these courts have the first say in cases with national implications, such as immigration, public health, and climate, among others. So who sits on these courts matters. But of all the federal trial courts, more than a quarter have never had a non-white judge. In some districts, that's not a big surprise. But in Georgia's Southern District, 1/3 of the population is Black. It's the district with the largest non-white population to have never had a non-white judge. That means here, in the majority Black city of Augusta, this courthouse has never had a Black judge preside inside. The same goes for the district's other federal courthouses in majority Black cities, including Savannah and Brunswick. The reasons are complex. A combination of limited opportunity, bare-knuckle politics, and bad timing are all factors. And, of course, there's the South's legacy of racial discrimination. We came to Georgia to learn more about why this district, with its sizable Black population, has never had a Black district judge.
Savannah's contribution to the civil rights movement really kind of spans back into the days of the Underground Railroad.
Here in South Georgia, reminders of the region's troubled racial history are all around. From the banks of the Savannah River, where boats carrying enslaved Africans would dock, to the memorial honoring Confederate soldiers in downtown Augusta. Even the region's biggest sporting event has a checkered racial history.
Black players were not allowed to compete in the Masters back then.
Yet the region's Black legal community has a deep and rich history, including on state courts.
Gene Gaston was the first African-American Superior Court judge here and first Black elected to the bench. And Bobby Hill, who was a famed legislator and lawyer here, he worked for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund.
Not to mention, Savannah is where Clarence Thomas grew up. During law school, he even spent a summer working on civil rights cases at the city's first integrated law firm, Hill, Jones & Farrington. In other words, politicians looking for qualified Black nominees to appoint to the federal bench did not need to look far.
So I've always thought, well, if there was ever a job or a position that I would want, that would be to be nominated and hopefully appointed to the federal bench in the Southern District of Georgia.
Lester B. Johnson III is something of an elder statesman to the Savannah Black legal community. But he says opportunities for Black lawyers at elite law firms have been hard to come by.
I did not get any offers from any of the predominantly, well, actually at that time they were all white law firms. Didn't get any offers from them, but a small Black law firm here in Savannah made me an offer.
Here in Augusta, there are firms that have no racial diversity in their firms. Why is that?
3 hours north in Augusta, Ed Tarver runs another successful firm. Before that, he was the first and only Black U.S. attorney for the Southern District. His path to the law was not always clear.
When I was a senior in high school, I saw a white attorney, and I said, hey, I think I'd like to do that. But that didn't mean that I saw myself doing that, and didn't know any African-American attorneys.
For aspiring judges, connections can be essential to getting on the short list. Many trial court judges come from the law's most elite institutions: large corporate law firms, state and federal prosecutors' offices, and other judicial posts. By contrast, until recently, the career path for many Black attorneys involved working in the public interest, such as on civil rights, public defense, or labor issues. These are areas of the law that typically lack connections to the gatekeepers running the nominations process.
You have to either have that direct access with your U.S. senators or someone in the political process, or you have to have a relationship with someone who will be your advocate, your sponsor.
Then there's this. There just haven't been very many seats to fill. Georgia's Southern District began with one judge and only gained its second and third seats in the 1970s. Only 16 judges have sat on the bench in the court's history.
There can't be a replacement until a vacancy occurs. Generally, once they get those positions, they stay for a long time.
Finally, there's a matter of timing and politics. In the past 40 years, Democratic presidents have appointed more diverse judges to the district courts than Republicans. And yet Barack Obama, who made diversifying the federal courts a key priority, never had an opening on Georgia's Southern District trial court. The last vacancy came when Donald Trump was president. He picked Magistrate Judge R. Stan Baker.
If we didn't have a Democratic president and a Democratic-leaning Congress, the chances of being selected were slim to none for African-American attorneys in the Southern District of Georgia.
That's the history. But what does it mean for the Black legal community to never see one of its own elevated to the federal trial court in the district? What does it mean for justice writ large? And what are the prospects of ever seeing a Black judge on this bench? If there was ever a moment for Georgia's Southern District to break the color barrier, it would seem to be now. Georgia's two progressive senators have been longtime advocates for a diverse judiciary, and President Biden's judicial nominations have set records for diversity. There's just one problem. There aren't any vacancies on the horizon. History shows that if the color barrier in Georgia's Southern District is going to be broken, the Black legal community will need to stay active and engaged.
Black lawyers need to be outspoken. And if it is potent enough, then democracy has no choice but to yield to it.
We had, while I was U.S. Attorney, some criminal investigations that in effect resulted in the incarceration of every African-American male in one specific community. By diversity and experiences alone, you would have judges who would be more aware of the impact of that kind of thing.
I always pray for that day to come, that we will have a Black person sitting over in the courthouse while I'm alive.